Yeah, I'm guessing at this point, like anybody, right? But here's what I believe about innovation. If you know that there's a disruptive technology or innovation or macro trend happening, even if you don't know how it'll impact you, it's best to get involved early and evolve with it.
In the world of technology, heroes are everywhere. They're overcoming disruption, delivering sustainable outcomes, and fearlessly forging the future to solve what's next. Join me, Ed McNamara, as we meet the people and businesses driving change in our constantly disruptive world. This is Innovation Heroes, a podcast brought to you by SHI. Hey innovators, welcome back to a brand new season of Innovation Heroes. I'm beyond excited to kick off season 6 with you. We've been busy working on 12 amazing hero stories, and this year we are taking things to the next level. We've just moved into our brand new state-of-the-art podcast studio here at SHI World Headquarters in New Jersey. If you're listening to the audio version, this is your reminder that full video episodes are also available on our YouTube. And even though I have a face for radio, as they say, you can head over to youtube.com and search for SHI Corporation to see us in action. We're also shaking up the format. We'll still be speaking to the people and businesses behind the most inspirational innovation stories. But every now and then, I'll ask a colleague at SHI to join and share their opinion or expertise on the given topic. Together, we'll dive into the big stories and share how SHI is helping business leaders like you solve what's next. Today, I'm joined by Dave Gruver, the field CTO at SHI. Dave is a powerhouse when it comes to driving technical strategy and delivering effective solutions for SHI's global customers. Before joining SHI, he spent 25 years at AT&T, climbing the ranks to the title of Assistant Vice President, and I can't think of a better first co-host to join me on this brand new season. Dave, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Ed. Thanks for having me. It's good to see you again. I think we were last together in June at our EUC Summit.
At the End User Computing Summit, that is absolutely correct, and hope to see you at another one again soon. For the purposes of our virtual meeting today, in today's episode, we're exploring how Industry 4.0 is spurring innovations across all sectors from healthcare to retail, manufacturing, both here on Earth and even in outer space, and we'll get to that in a second. A little later, we're going to hear from Stacey Shulman, but for now, let's hear a little bit about you and what you do for SHI's customers.
Sure, Ed. I've been in this role about a year and a half, in this role of field CTO focused on the end user compute arena. And I work with our global customers, our largest customers, to identify and execute to their goals in the end user compute space, whether it's deployments or support, transformation, all those areas that, our global customers are working to always improve themselves. We like to get in there and help them and offer where, SHI's services and capabilities can help them improve their business.
And what are they dealing with right now? I mean, like, what are you seeing in terms of like the biggest and most complex IT organizations that you're supporting in the global space? What's really top of mind for them right now?
I think it's about, staying current, right? With everything that's going on with AI, especially AI in the endpoint, which is far less mature than even what's going on in AI in the cloud, things like ChatGPT, but on the endpoint, they're trying to figure out how to take best advantage of these capabilities, where they're going to impact their business. And I think the other thing that plays into it is technological debt, right? Especially with the larger, older companies that have a lot of legacy software, legacy applications that are really crucial to their business. How do they move forward and not abandon those things that are core to their business? How do they bring those forward economically? And that's across the board, whether it's finance, pharma, high tech, communications, entertainment, all the segments I work with, and you see some commonalities across the board.
And, in the concept of Industry 4.0, the fourth industrial revolution, kind of characterized by the integration of digital technologies into manufacturing and industry, what's your take as somebody who's seasoned and has kind of seen it all especially from the manufacturer side, just what's your take on defining Industry 4.0? And I won't even say the constraints. It seems like it's, we don't even know what the constraints might be. The possibilities seem endless.
Yeah, it's a pretty exciting time. From a core technology, you look at sort of AI and edge computing and IoT as big segments of that. But what it can mean in terms of manufacturing, in terms of more efficiency, better quality, better repeatability. Also, I think something that gets left behind sometimes in Industry 4.0 is as you move to these digital capabilities, you also expand your access to the intelligence to run them, right? The old days of a factory floor, the people had to be there to run it. So you needed people in that area, whether maybe you were in, the sort of the car industry, or up in the upper Midwest, or maybe you're in, the garment industry or the furniture manufacturing industry down in the Southeast, right? Going back, 50 years or so, you had to be on-prem to do that. With these digital capabilities, you can access knowledge almost anywhere in the world and bring it in as part of your manufacturing. I think that's something that sometimes gets lost, that capability. It also has a big impact on the labor market too, where you might have been protected regionally. You're now competing internationally for your job in a lot of cases. So there's some things going on there. And I think, I was fortunate before I came to AT&T and onto SHI. I worked in the manufacturing industry. I actually built sails for a living for sailboats. And I got to see, I actually was part of a group that really transitioned the sailmaking industry from a labor intensive to a capital intensive process, where the old way was to sew panels together to create a sail, just like you create a shirt, right? You sew on the collar, you sew on the sleeves. That was the old way of doing it. That was labor intensive. Where I work, we developed a process to make a sail in one piece, using large gantries and thread laying machines, and make this sort of monocoque structure. And that was sort of that industry's step towards 4.0 manufacturing. But the other part of that is it really shifted from labor intensive to capital intensive, and that changed who could play in that space, right? So now it's a lot harder. I think that's going to be an interesting thing how this shakes out. We've seen in sort of the digital world where companies can become cloud-based, that can start up very quickly because they have access to all these common resources. I don't know if that's going to happen in the manufacturing world, because you have to have that combination of the manufacturing capability, but then you need better tooling, which can be expensive, right? And how is that going to play out? Will that create more consolidation? I don't know, but it's going to be an interesting thing to play through.
I love that you mentioned your experience in sailmaking, and I'm really happy that we got to it, because when I think back to like the technology innovation, the show's Innovation Heroes, Stacey Shulman, talks about manufacturing in space. I mean, how cool is it to you that as somebody who is in the multi-millennium, age of sailmaking, and that transportation is still leading the way in terms of where we might be driving innovation next?
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I think, for me, when I look at sort of I think they call it Space 4.0. I think it's got its own term now. Is that right? And yeah, I think it's interesting to see what we're doing there. And it's interesting to see where it can actually touch our lives individually, right? Again, I have to go back to sailing. When we started sailing across the ocean in races when I was in my 20s, which is with the gray hair, that was a while ago. It was navigate by the stars using a sextant. If you're lucky, you had a single sideband radio. You might, when I got a little older, we had weather faxes. You had this limited data. Now you have Starlink. And what an amazing, think about Starlink. I don't know if it really falls into Space 4.0, but I think it kind of does, because of the communication that it allows from and to really increases the capability. And that communication is going to support more data transfer to space, right, as they improve that. So that's one thing that I see going on. The other thing that I think that I understand is a big part of, Space 4.0 is where additive manufacturing comes in. And it's been really interesting to see how that goes on. Behind me, I've got I've been a 3D printer hobbyist for a long time, but to see this same type of technology scaled up, printing metals, printing rocket boosters, thrusters and things like that, and the ability to create in space, and just that concept overall of additive manufacturing, where I'm not starting with a block of aluminum or titanium and milling away all the parts with a lot of waste, and I have to carry all this weight. Think about that in space. I can start with a filament of something and create without any waste. And what that means in terms of the capability, and also for additive manufacturing, what you can do in space where gravity isn't a factor, is a whole nother leap in capability to create things to be used back on Earth, or to create things to be taken forward in space. I think it's pretty exciting to see what's going on, and it'll be interesting. You and I are of similar age. Our space, I think when I started, it was space 2.0 or 3.0. with the Apollo program, and the thing we got out of that was
Right.
Tang. I think we're going to do a little better this time with what's going on in Space 4.0.
So the buzz around Industry 4.0 has been impossible to ignore. Its promise of revolutionizing industries through advanced technologies like AI, IoT, and robotics. But there's an exciting new dimension to this revolution, space. To kick off our 6th season, we've invited back the wonderful Stacey Shulman, Vice President of Health, Education, and Consumer Industries at Intel. With a deep understanding of integrating cutting-edge tech into business strategies, Stacey will shed light on how space innovation is poised to redefine the business landscape. Now, this interview was recorded just before we finished up the new studio, but it's packed with insights you won't want to miss. Let's dive into that now, and then Dave and I will be back to tackle the exciting future of Industry 4.0. Innovation Heroes is proudly produced by SHI, a leading global IT solutions provider dedicated to making life simpler for business and IT professionals. For over 30 years, we've bridged the gap between digital strategy and execution, delivering cutting-edge technology and services to thousands of customers worldwide. Whether you're navigating the cloud, strengthening cybersecurity, or transforming your workplace, SHI is here to help. To learn more, visit shi.com/solvewhatsnext. That's shi.com/solvewhatsnext to embrace the future with stress-free, scalable solutions that you and your people will love. Stacey, welcome back to Innovation Heroes.
Thank you. It's always fun to be here.
It's always fun to have you. You're going to kick off our season once again, and we really appreciate it. So this is your 6th visit to our show. We love having you kicking off the season because the conversation could literally go anywhere. So you're one of the few guests where we say, what do you want to talk about? And over the last few seasons, you've covered a wide range of topics from healthcare to hotels and all things AI. But for this episode, you specifically requested that we talk about space. So I'm in. Why space and why now?
This is one that caught me off guard a little bit. And so I thought that, we should help others not be caught off guard by it. And so it kind of started early in the year. I was at an event, and I happened to be with a man named Cam Ghaffarian. Cam is the person who founded a lot of space companies. I would say very unlike some of the other space people that we've seen in the press. He's highly understated. And so earlier this year, the U.S., for the first time in 50 years, re-landed a craft on the moon. Mm-hmm. That was Cam's company that did that. And I was with him the day after that all happened and got a chance to spend some really quality time with him on what's really going on in the space, area. It's not something I'd really been paying attention to. And he was, what was shocking was how far ahead these technologies are, right? And how far ahead the next International Space Station is, how far ahead we are in looking at consumer space travel. And then I started looking at, okay, let me just go look at this industry. And so maybe a couple facts on the industry. Okay. McKinsey did a study on this space, and they believe that the space industry by 2035 will be $1.8 trillion industry. Wow. And that with an upside potential to up to 2.31 trillion. And so when you look at kind of what it is in 2023, or what it was in 2023, it was a $630 billion industry that most of us were unaware of, right? That's bigger, just putting that perspective, that's bigger than the silicon industry and about half the size of the payments industry. And so when we start kind of looking at those numbers, then I kind of looked at, well, let's break down those numbers. So that number breaks down into, I would say, half and half. Half of it is the things, supporting the space industry, the infrastructure, the satellite launches, satellites, that industry, which is what most people think is the space industry. Right. But the other half is the usage of those technologies. So think about GPS and what GPS did to all of our technical enablement. That was all space technology. And so if we think about that and you look at stuff like GPS and what can happen when you start developing in space, we know that it's something that happens kind of overnight. practically. It feels overnight to us because we wake up to it one day.
Right.
Where the entire industry has been growing for a long time. And so I've been kind of on this journey of looking at, well, what are the industries impacted by the technologies that might come out of the space industry? And what do we need to think about as all the different industries, for me, that all the industries that touch people?
Absolutely. The space industry is expected to shape numerous industries in the next 5 or 10 years, from space tourism to manufacturing in space. Can you give us an overview of how these advancements will impact various sectors and spur innovation?
Yeah, I'm guessing at this point, like anybody, right? But here's what I believe about innovation. If you know that there's a disruptive technology or innovation or macro trend happening, even if you don't know how it'll impact you, it's best to get involved early and evolve with it. And start building hypotheses and start looking. So I will say my hypotheses on these areas, and things that I've been exploring personally are, one, you talked about manufacturing. We know that in suborbital space, gravity-free environment, a great vacuum type environment, you can do more. You can build pure crystals. You can, the types of chemicals and materials that can be combined are different. You can combine things that aren't combinable here on, within our gravity environment. So, when you look at manufacturing, I think we're going to see new materials come out of things that are manufactured in space. And we're going to see better materials coming out of, like crystals that are used in compute and whatnot. I think even silicon manufacturing, we're going to see a better way of doing silicon manufacturing in space. So there's that manufacturing angle. Then there's the other angle that around biotech. And the other surprise that kind of caught me off guard is when I was on my listening tour in the beginning of this year, I met with a lot of biotechnology companies and life sciences companies, and was surprised to hear that a lot of them are already manufacturing in space, in suborbital space. I was unaware of that. Like, I thought it was a novelty, a couple people might be doing it here and there. And no, there's a lot more than what I thought happening already. And so when we start looking at, the field of medicine, I think we're going to see some things come out of space and manufacturing in the life sciences space and biopharma space that are revolutionary. And so that's another area. AI, look, we like to talk about AI a lot. If we look at the usage of that data, so even things like we've got, I don't remember how many, I think it's 50,000 satellites now orbiting the Earth. And all the data from those satellites, it needs to be looked at. And and we can use that data for things like, early warning systems for global catastrophes, for weather. We can use that for fire detection. These satellites can detect within minutes when a fire breaks out pretty much anywhere in the world. And so those are the types of things that we haven't started really seeing scale yet, but we're seeing proof points that it's going to scale. And so those are just a few examples.
And I think, the one thing that I had in my head, I'm like, where is all of this taking place when you start talking about like manufacturing in space? And, I hadn't realized that there were 2,848 satellite launches in 2023 alone. So you say there's 50,000 out there, and then I saw there's almost 2,900 satellite launches just in 2023. I'm like, boy, there is way more up there than I had any idea about, and we're adding to it at it's got to be a record rate, right?
So it's kind of shocking how fast it's happening, and we're just on the front end of it, right? We're seeing the front end of that, of getting the infrastructure there. What happens once that infrastructure is there? The people who invested in that need to monetize it, and I think that's where we're going to start seeing a lot of these innovations.
How can businesses leverage the unique conditions of space to innovate and improve their manufacturing processes?
Well, this is the question I think that we need to explore is, what we know is that materials manufacturing in space, you can do a lot more. The other angle I would take on it is that, and a lot of times in manufacturing, you need either extreme heat or extreme cold. And the amount of energy it takes to do that here on planet, right, is insane. It's crazy amounts of energy to go extremes. And a lot of materials manufacturing, you need those extremes. Well, when you get into space, it's actually, you don't need energy at all to do that. You need to put it in the shade or you need to put it in the sun. I mean, that's pretty much it. And you have your extremes. So it's a matter of like moving it from one location to another, is it shaded or not? And you have the extremes that you need. So I don't think we've scratched the surface yet on what manufacturing in space can do for us. But again, it's going to get there quick. And that's, kind of evidenced by that hockey stick that we were talking about. So I anticipate the manufacturing will be the same kind of hockey stick. Will that hockey stick start in 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years is a debate. My bet is that it's closer to the 5-year mark when we start seeing that hockey stick. And that's why I'm kind of looking at, if it's in 5-year mark, a lot of us need to start thinking about it now.
Sticking with the moon, the efforts to establish moon bases and eventually occupied Mars totally gaining momentum. What are some of the implications of these initiatives for businesses on Earth? Like how can companies get involved, or how can they benefit from these projects, moving forward?
Yeah, that's actually one of the areas that's kind of personally exciting for me. I kind of look at the work that I do that benefits humanity and the work that I do that, drives a P&L. So on the work that I do that benefits humanity side of things, this is where I'm excited is that, if NASA wants to set up a permanent base camp on the moon, which is their plan, and they're going to get astronauts back on the moon by 2030, lots going on there. Well, what you need to do is you need to have sustainability. So when we talk about sustainability goals, we're going to see it in its extreme on the moon. You don't have easy access to water on the moon, and how much water can you fly over from Earth? And so we need to be able to, we know there's ice crystals on the moon, but is it drinkable water? Likely not. There's probably a lot of precious metals in that water. So those precious metals need to be extracted out, and it needs to be done in an energy efficient way, which we don't have that capability today. And so the good news is that when government starts trying to solve those problems, they put investment into those things that ultimately will come back to Earth and improve our lives here. If we can extract lithium, cobalt, and precious metals from water and make it drinkable, not only do we get to reuse those precious metals for things that we need and we don't have to mine them, but we also can increase our water supply. And so those types of technologies, I think, in our quest for putting something on the moon is going to be beneficial for everyone. And that doesn't even get into vertical manufacturing or vertical farming and agriculture and sustainable agriculture. All of these things we're going to need.
Yeah, at 8 pounds a gallon, the more you can use of anything that's on the moon already that you don't have to fly there would be huge from a water perspective. That's really interesting.
Yeah, from a construction perspective, you can't fly concrete over.
No. Great point.
Or metal, for that matter. I mean, you're going to need to manufacture 3D print habitats on the moon using concrete that's made from lunar material.
So space programs innovate and plan over a much longer time than what most companies are accustomed to. It's not really it's not quarter to quarter, that's for sure. So how can companies align their quarterly reports and short-term goals with the long-term vision required to achieve, like, let's say, a 30-year goal, which is somebody's career versus the next quarterly milestone?
Well, I think that it's not 30 years out for the benefits. Again, I'll kind of come back to GPS. Technologies like that we will see more of that come out of this effort. it's not 30 years for that. So I think that
Right.
one company should look at kind of that roadmap. You've got your short, medium, long-term roadmap, like any, I'd say, innovation team should be doing. You've got to make money today to fund your aspirations for tomorrow. But you should know what that roadmap looks like. And so looking at what do I need today? What's the path to get there? How do I back into what I need today? And how does that help me make money right now? And so when I look at that, I think, the shorter term horizon are the technologies, the assistive technologies that are going to come out of space. The data, you look at the insurance companies, what they can do with that kind of data. Building companies, what they can do, manufacturing companies, and the medical industry, what can it do with the data and the experiments, and what types of experiments should they be thinking about in space today? That all you can start on now. That's not a 30-year plan. And then looking at, doing a little, I'd say, thought experiment on what types of technologies do we think could be more beneficial for us as a business, and what do we think could happen if we start building on the moon, if we start setting up travel to the International Space Station. We're going to have multiple international space stations. We're going to have private international space stations. What does that look like, and what happens in industry when that starts going? And that's not 20 years out. That's 5 years out.
You kind of said a couple of short term already, but 5 years, 10 years, what exciting developments are happening right now that business leaders can keep an eye on, from where you're sitting? What's your prediction?
Well, I think that when we start looking at, again, manufacturing and biotech, those are areas, if they're not looking at space right now, they're going to be caught off guard. Because it's moving faster than it's moving around them already, and their competitors are probably looking at it, based on the companies I've talked to. Supply chain, anybody who runs a sophisticated supply chain, start thinking about what it looks like when you can fly goods from one part of the world to the other side of the world in under an hour. What does that do to your supply chain? Because that's coming within the next 5 years as well. And so when you think about kind of supply chain abilities, like if you can get anything manufactured anywhere, in the world, outside of the world, and you can have it landed where you need to land it within hours, where do you manufacture? And those are the types of things that I think, I think are going to start like really kind of disrupting in a good way the ways we do things today. And so, and then, water technology, energy harvesting. I think all of those categories is where we're going to see huge improvements. And some of that is mixed with hope, my optimism,
of
and
course,
hope that this comes true. But this is kind of the indicators that I'm seeing.
That is fascinating. I will finally make it to Australia. If we get that flight down to an hour, I'm there. Like it's the only thing that stopped me so far.
It's really close. It's not like 15 years out. We're talking within, before we hit 2030. So within the next 6 years, that'll be available.
I love it. Stacey, thank you so much for being with us again. For listeners interested in learning more about you, or who would like to reach out to you directly, what's the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, the best place is either on LinkedIn or just email me directly at stacey.shulman@intel.com.
Awesome. Stacey, thanks again.
Thank you.
So, Dave, Stacey shared some big numbers about the future business potential of space innovation, but businesses aren't used to thinking long-term like that, and how do you get a business to go long-term, big picture thinking when they have, shareholders who are interested in the next quarter and have some very specific number performance-based short-term goals? How do you get to that, pie in the sky, literally ship in the sky, kind of way of thinking, while still, hitting all of those short-term quarterly goals along the way that public companies need to.
Yeah, I think it's a big challenge, right? When you think about those type of long-term cycles and the fact that it takes quite a while for those investments to really drive their return. Now, the returns are so compelling, right? That's why you want to do it. You want to get there and get those returns. And so, I think a lot of it comes down to leadership and communication in that case, right? Can you articulate the value of this endeavor to your shareholders or your investors and keep them engaged along the way of getting there? Can you show the milestones of progress that will say, yes, we are moving forward? And also, the level of transparency you've got to have about, we stubbed our toe, but we're still moving forward. And it also, again, it takes I think it takes a quite a mindset to have that level of imagination and commitment and surrounding yourself with people like that to pull that off. It's fascinating to think about it. And, the question is, could this create a world where private companies have a leg up? And then you go back, I was thinking too about like Amazon. How many years did Amazon lose money before they became the true behemoth they are now? And, they had the right leadership that kept people on board. They were delivering the service and they just kept iterating and improving to get to where they are now. I guess that's, one way to think about it as well. There are companies out there before this case that have gone through that, but it's I don't know how steep a hill it is. It's a hill into space. That's pretty steep, but it's a long hill, isn't it?
And you'd better have a charismatic leader at the top, because that Amazon was funded by that rising stock price. Like, what happens if that doesn't keep going?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a really fascinating challenge from just a financial perspective to achieve those type of goals.
In terms of the practical steps businesses can take to prepare for what's next, SHI is always, our goal is we keep it general because we don't know. It's solve what's next. How do businesses just make sure that they're prepared to keep their minds open to this kind of innovation?
I think number one, and you kind of said it, open-minded. I think you've got to hire and nurture a mindset of curiosity. You've got to have that in your workforce, right? You can't be holding on to what I have. You got to be looking for what I can do, right? What can we take forward? So that to me is just underpins everything. If you don't have a curious culture within your business, you're potentially going to miss. And to look to other areas, if you're in telecom or you're in pharma or you're in banking or whatever, or manufacturing, look to other industries. What are they doing? Can you pull that over? But I think those are really important things. I think, for us with our company, I think that's one of the things I love about SHI is that curiosity. As you may know, we've been working a lot on building our AI lab out in Somerset, both, using on-prem cloud resources. We've extended that to have endpoint AI as part of that. We're ready to help customers on that journey, and how are those tools going to help them move their business forward? It's an interesting thing. I think the other part of it is, as you look at that, is to know it's sort of a paraphrase of an old beer ad, right? With great automation comes great responsibility, and making sure you think carefully through the ramifications as you more automate your business, whether it's a manufacturing process or it might even be an internal workflow. If you don't have the right architecture and understanding of it as well, right? As you IP enable more of your business, put it on the internet. Do you have the right security controls, the right defenses there? Have you thought through the what if scenarios? If this goes wrong, how do we control it, stop it, reset it? All those things that have to happen. So there's a lot of factors in this world we're living in with, a big part of Industry 4.0 is that level of automation. Do you have the right sphere of controls around it and understanding to implement it successfully and, continuously?
So we've journeyed through the exciting possibilities that space innovation brings to the business world, uncovering how these advancements can drive efficiency, open a whole universe of possibilities and opportunities, and redefine corporate strategies. As we move forward, it's crucial for business leaders to stay informed and proactive about integrating these cutting-edge technologies. A big thank you to Stacey Shulman for sharing her invaluable insights and expertise, and to this episode's co-host Dave Gruver for joining me in this odyssey exploring Industry 4.0. Remember, the future of your business might just be found in the stars. Until next time, keep innovating, stay ahead of the curve. I'm Ed McNamara, and I'll see you again in 2 weeks.